I have a client who became my client after he was convicted for tax fraud. In 2015, he received a lot of Bitcoin straight from a miner. These Bitcoin had never been on an exchange. And in 2016, he sold $250,000 in Bitcoin for fiat and reported it as a charitable deduction, when in fact he had pocketed the money. Two men from the IRS showed up at his doorstep. These are the IRS guys with the guns on their hips and badges. It turns out that the IRS had discovered his Bitcoin private wallet address. They had dusted it with Satoshis. Every time he transferred Bitcoin out of his wallet, the IRS saw Satoshis move. All that was left was the plea bargain. He paid $240,000 and was sentenced to 1 year in jail. He told me that if he could do it all over again, he would have paid his taxes back in 2016. The gain was not worth the pain. Can financial integrity be restored? In this week's episode, I'm going to present to you the speech that I gave in May of 2023 to the Thank God for Bitcoin conference, one of the keynote speeches. I hope you enjoy it. It's a refreshing view on the biblical perspective for taxes. In my lifetime, I have never heard a biblical message on the topic of taxes. So I think this is going to be new ground for you all. I entitled this talk, A Biblical Perspective on Taxes. The primary question to consider is whether a Christian is obliged to pay taxes. In Matthew 22:17, the religious and political leaders asked Jesus a famous question. His answer left them stupefied. But first, a couple of interpretive observations about this question. I consider that the term Caesar is a metonymy referring to the government of which Caesar was the title of the ruler of the government. So I understand that Caesar can be interpreted as any government with the authority to tax. Today, that would mean all federal, state, and local governments. Secondly, I interpret the word taxes as referring to all types of taxes that a government could assess, including wealth, income, VAT, sales, probate, poll, excise, customs, fees, as well as penalties and interest. The third phrase is it lawful, which asks if a Jew, under Jewish law, is obliged to obey secular laws. This question explores the intersection of two different sets of laws. I believe this question applies to Christians as well. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? This is the question I'd like to explore with you. It's a question that is still relevant 2,000 years later. Many wrestle with the legitimacy and obligation to pay taxes to the government or not. Here in the United States, industry and IRS statistics indicate that as few as 1/4 of all cryptocurrency owners are reporting their income from cryptocurrencies on their tax returns. Or, to phrase it differently, as few as 1/4 of all cryptocurrency owners have chosen to even render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. What is the first reference to taxes in the Bible? One of the oldest biblical references to government taxation occurs in 1 Samuel chapter 8. The people of Israel asked the prophet Samuel to give them a king to judge over them. God tells Samuel to show them the behavior of the king who would reign over them. Samuel then tells the people, this is the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons, take your daughters, take the best of your fields, vineyards, olive gardens, and sheep, and you shall be his slaves. Samuel is saying it is the nature of governments to take. Today, we call this taking taxes. Samuel didn't make tax payment conditional upon the good behavior of the king. Samuel didn't make paying taxes conditional upon the soundness of the money. Neither did Jesus carve out any exceptions for the paying of taxes. What is the first reference to a tax exemption in the Bible? Since governments have the power to tax, they also have the power to create loopholes or exemptions. The first biblical reference to this occurs when King Saul is looking for someone to defeat the giant Goliath. In addition to receiving great riches and marriage to his daughter, the victor would get a lifetime exemption from paying taxes. Wouldn't that be great to have a lifetime exemption from paying taxes? I could do that. Today, taxes are complex. Clever people have found clever ways to reduce their taxes legally. And as the U.S. appeals judge named Learned Hand said, anyone may arrange his affairs so that his taxes shall be as low as possible. Nobody owes any public duty to pay more than the law demands. So it's okay to be clever in paying our taxes legally. How are taxes related to a sovereign God? Many Christians interpret Jesus' answer to the politicians as dividing the Christian view of money into secular and heavenly realms. They act as though their financial conduct is unrelated to their spiritual lives. When we consider that all things are subject to Christ, then we are challenged to see how taxes are integrated into our faith. The Apostle Paul in Romans 13 explains that our financial lives are inseparable from our spiritual lives. He hits the nail right in the head. I quote from chapter 13. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid. For he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore, you must be subject not only because of wrath, but also for conscience' sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for they are God's ministers attending continually to this very thing. Render therefore to all their due, taxes to whom taxes due, customs to whom customs, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So here in Romans chapter 13, Paul helps us see Jesus' answer in a new way. By rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's, we simultaneously render unto God what is God's. They are not two acts. They are not two different acts. They are one and the same. All that we have is from a sovereign God. He is our source. He will provide all our needs, including our taxes, from his riches in Christ Jesus. Paying taxes is part of the life of faith. Now, that may be more challenging than pulling a coin from the mouth of the first fish you catch. Can we choose not to be tax compliant? Some people protest paying taxes. They think they are clever. The government thinks they are tax evaders. Tax evasion is a felony subject to up to $250,000 in penalty and 5 years in prison. On May 5th, in the period of 24 hours, 4 people told me that they did not file their tax returns. The janitor in the bathroom told me that the IRS was actually a foreign corporation based in Hong Kong, operated by the Chinese. A podcaster told me in no uncertain terms that the 16th Amendment to the Constitution did not give the government the authority to tax the people. A woman told me that the IRS had set up a black ops site in the mountains near Reno, Nevada. I get it. Who hasn't been outraged by how much they pay in taxes at the federal, state, and local levels? We could all spend that money much better than corrupt governments. I understand that frustration. That's exactly what the prophet Samuel was referring to. He said we would feel this way. Finally, a pastor proudly told me that he hadn't paid any taxes or filed for the last 30 years. This is a pastor telling me, with pride, about his criminal activities. A pastor is responsible for leading a flock of believers into righteousness, not into criminal activities. He believed that the IRS was a private business operated out of the Cayman Islands this time. I told him the IRS was a government agency operated by the Department of the Treasury, but he strongly disagreed. Then he confided in me that since he was nearing retirement, he would like my help filing some taxes because he wanted to get his Social Security retirement check. Now get this. He's been stiffing the government for 30 years, and now he thinks he's entitled to get Social Security. I told him his Social Security check was dependent on how much money the IRS in the Cayman Islands had deposited into the government's Social Security Trust Fund on his behalf. I get it. We all had times when we feared that there was not enough money to make ends meet. The answer to this fear is faith, not fraud. But remember Moses, who, quote, considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. Tax evasion and tax fraud flows from unbelief. Tax evasion flows from the fear of the world over faith in God's providence. I have a client who became my client after he was convicted for tax fraud. In 2015, he received a lot of Bitcoin straight from a miner. These Bitcoin had never been on an exchange. And in 2016, he sold $250,000 in Bitcoin for fiat and reported it as a charitable deduction, when in fact he had pocketed the money. 2 men from the IRS showed up at his doorstep. These are the IRS guys with the guns on their hips and badges. After he answered their questions, they said that they would still watch him. A year later, a U.S. district attorney sent him an indictment for criminal tax fraud. It turns out that the IRS had discovered his Bitcoin private wallet address. They had dusted it with Satoshis. Every time he transferred Bitcoin out of his wallet, the IRS saw Satoshis move. All that was left was the plea bargain. He paid $240,000 and was sentenced to 1 year in jail. He told me that if he could do it all over again, he would have paid his taxes back in 2016. The gain was not worth the pain. Can financial integrity be restored? God is redeeming all things to himself. Perhaps you haven't filed or reported all your Bitcoin and crypto gains on your taxes. Maybe you're a tax protester like the people I described. Maybe you got off on the wrong foot with crypto taxes and don't know how to get back. I understand. My staff have helped over 1,200 people file tax amnesty returns and come into compliance. It's not as scary as you think. We can help you transition to compliance. Here at the Thank God for Bitcoin conference, we believe that a transition to sound money is the source of hope for a world broken by a corrupt monetary system. We can all amplify this hope's power by committing to personal financial integrity. Conversely, nothing will destroy the power and impact of this conference and this mission than for it to be tarnished by association with tax evaders and tax protesters. This is especially true of all leaders in this movement. As Paul said, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. But remember what Jesus said, with God, all things are possible. So to God be the glory. Thank you for your time.
Welcome to the Clinton Donnelly Show, where we explore how taxation and regulations of cryptocurrencies affect your daily life as an investor. Clinton has a law degree in international financial regulation. He is an enrolled agent and certified as a cryptocurrency anti-financial crime specialist. He has clients in 71 countries. He is one of the top experts in crypto taxation in the US. This show is sponsored by CryptoTaxAudit.com, the income tax experts for US crypto investors. Are you frustrated with using online crypto tax services to calculate capital gains? Are you a high-frequency trader, DeFi, NFT, play-to-earn, or whale investor? Nothing is too complicated for the experts at CryptoTaxAudit.com. Are you frustrated that your accountant doesn't understand crypto taxes? Crypto Tax Audit uses a proven, bulletproof crypto tax return methodology to prepare a tax return that doesn't attract the attention of the IRS. Crypto Tax Audit also offers an exclusive audit defense membership service. It's like car insurance for your tax return. If your return gets selected for an audit of crypto reporting, they will defend you at no additional charge for the entire life of the audit. No one offers anything like audit defense membership. Go to CryptoTaxAudit.com to learn more and schedule a private tax consultation now. The opinions expressed in this show are not legal advice. Tax and regulations are complicated. Your situation is unique, so you should always consult a tax professional.